Hello and welcomed to Destined to Evolve Wellness. I am your host, the best podcast host in the universe, Steve Cully. I would like to thank our sponsors at Parseghian Partners. Parseghian Partners, one of the top 50 fastest growing companies in the nation. And we need to come together for Sean Rabinowitz, the president. His son, Ben, has leukemia. You can go on his website, which we'll put in the show notes, and they will send a testing kit right to your house. He needs a bone marrow transplant. Send the kit, quick cheek swab. They send it right back, and you could be the match that saves Ben's life. And also the commercial you will see before this, Pete Finch in the Finch Law Firm. Pete Finch, if you feel your rights have been violated or if you have been wrongly arrested in a pinch, call Finch. And Bleeding Blue for Good. Mike Burton has done a phenomenal job getting involved, raising money, and you can see the difference on the field. And we are going bowling because of it. So all we need is more people to contribute, and our NIL collective will be a force to be reckoned with. And now, my lovely host, who I've said her name wrong for the past 2 weeks, and she finally corrected me.
I kept forgetting. Mom brain.
Bethany Hart, Gary, right? Gary?
Yeah, Gary.
Yeah, not Jerry. Hargy, not Jerry, as I was saying. I was calling her G. I've done like 6 shows with you, and I called you Jerry on all of them. So
I don't even remember the first few. If I just remember the last couple, and then it totally forgot. It's a minor detail. It's a minor detail.
I'm like such a prick. I called her Jerry on every show.
Well, you wouldn't have known.
I know. And then, of course, the charismatic enigma himself, the real estate mogul and icon in Erie, Laban Marsh.
Good to be here with both of you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on. Go UConn. Go Huskies.
To see Laban twice in 1 week, it's just so special.
It's great. Anytime I can be with you, Steve, it's outstanding in the presence of greatness.
And I know how busy you are, so I appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask to start with Bethany. Track is a little unusual compared to the other sports. If you're looking at pure popularity, maybe, baseball, football, basketball, hockey, what made you initially want to get involved in track?
So it started in high school. I was a soccer player. Well, I'd been a gymnast for a long time, and then I got into soccer. And then, for spring sports, there really wasn't anything else that appealed to me. So, and I like from a gymnastics background where you have individual events.
Yes.
It was kind of great in track and field to have that same ability to be part of a team.
Yes.
But also have individual events and be able to play to your strengths, because there's so many events in track and field, right?
And they use you for all 4 times you could be used most of the time, right?
Yeah, I was definitely on the sprinting side.
Yes.
And then the throws. I was discus and shot put in high school. And then when I went to UConn, I wanted to still continue being an athlete, and track and field was an opportunity. I could walk onto the team.
Which I still can't believe.
I know. I was lucky.
The Olympian was a walk-on. That just blows my mind.
Well, it just goes to show you that, really anything's possible. I just love to work hard. I love being an athlete. I love pushing my body to be the best it could be and see what it was capable of doing. And it got me to really cool places.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I think that's one of the unique things about track and field, though, and why in different sports where it's still team, but there's competition, and then there's the coach who decides, right, who gets to play or whatnot. In track and field, like if you throw farther, if you run faster, you're going to go. And so even with like the trash talking, which I'm sure it happens on the women's side as much as it does on the men's, but you can talk all you want, but don't, like Phil Hunt always says, don't talk about it, be about it. And so that's the beauty of track and field. And I think to Bethany's point, there's an event for anybody and everybody.
That's true.
And I'd be curious to hear your opinion, Bethany, on multi-sports, especially in today's day and age, because I get frustrated with football, how many coaches miss the opportunity for their linemen specifically, and Steve being a lineman, for throws. Like the quickness and explosiveness required in the throws would help so many offense and defensive linemen. And yet these coaches want him in the weight room in the offseason. And I'm like, dude, get him. Like Brian Milne, who I mentioned this guy before, he's from my local area, my high school, but he went to Penn State, played football, and he threw shot, disc. I mean, he was a state champ. He was incredible. And he was a fullback at Penn State. But I mean, there is no doubt, in my opinion, at least, that the multi-sports helps immensely. And track being that multi-sport, you can kind of feed off of any other sport, and especially how you turned it into racing bobsled, right?
Yeah, right. Well, because to your point, the explosiveness, the strength training, it all transfers. That's the beauty of sport, right? Is a lot of it can transfer into other sports. Steve and I did a great podcast with some other folks from UConn, and we had an awesome conversation around youth sports and this idea of, multi-sport. Kids these days are specialized so early, and they're doing, one sport in town teams, in travel teams, and they're burning out before they even get to high school, never mind college. So I'm a big believer in multi-sport for sure.
Yeah. And Laban's daughter does volleyball. She is amazing at volleyball. I love watching the clips that you post. And she runs the 4x1 at track and the pole vault. The pole vault scares the hell out of me because Laban has a pole vault pit in his backyard.
It looks terrifying.
And once he was filming it, and I'm watching this, and I'm like, Jesus, that's hot.
Crazy.
Yeah. Everyone and all the neighborhood kids want to come over and do it. They all want to come over and do it, which I am shocked by. But Laban, did you start initially, I think, with indoor track?
Yeah, so I was fortunate to have a coach who was smart about recruiting. And I think that's the other thing. Some of these high school coaches don't understand that you have to recruit kids in high school, especially for track, because they don't necessarily know about it. It's not one of the main sports, if you will.
Right.
But I had a coach that pulled me aside, I think saw my athleticism, and he was the pole vault coach. And so he said, hey, come in as an 8th grader. He let me work with those guys. And so getting in earlier, whereas now you see kids that are exposed to this stuff super early. But I think it goes back to the earlier you can learn the fundamentals. And then it gets into that rule of 10,000 hours where these kids that do put in that time, and it doesn't have to be sports specific. I think just the rule of 10,000 hours and that work ethic and building your strength, and especially your core strength. That's where, like, I hear, and so many pole vaulters were gymnasts, because that core strength, it was huge, and understanding your kinesthetic awareness,
body awareness, absolutely,
all of that. So, but yeah, for me, I was kind of recruited by a pole vault coach, and then what happened was you kind of start to see, like, even for my daughter Mackenzie, I knew she was going to pole vault because she had been practicing with us. I didn't know how fast she was as a sprinter, though.
Yeah.
So then when they ran the first inter squad meet as a freshman, she finished like 2nd on the team, and I'm like,
where did that come from?
Yeah.
Then I also noticed the technique she used was very similar to mine, and I never realized how poor my technique was until I started watching her. So I think in that regard, I can start, like, this winter, she's going to be working out with some guys for both strength and conditioning that are going to tweak or try to tweak some of that form. And yet I also understand, and this you see in golf, like some really unique swings. Jim Furyk comes to mind. But you don't want to change them completely, but you got to learn to tweak some of the way they
you have to maximize, right?
Yeah, exactly. you don't need to change somebody completely, but there are certain things where they're just going to have natural tendencies with their technique. And so if you can find the right way to tweak that, and even a lot of that comes back to the mindset. And if they believe what you're tweaking helps, it's going to help. But if you can tell they're not buying into it, I wouldn't push it just because there's a lot said for somebody that just naturally goes out and uses their talent, and then somebody that has a more keen eye can help tweak it appropriately.
Exactly.
But I've seen so many
rigid parameters around this is how it has to be, and this is I totally agree.
It goes back on coaches a lot to recognize that, and the same thing with how you treat these athletes is important, because some of them can take the tough love, and we see this in the household. You know what I mean? There's some of my kids, and I don't know how it is with you, Bethany, but I treat, not that I treat my kids differently, but I know how to punish them or reward them. I mean, everybody's a little different, and if you don't understand that, it can really go sideways for you in the motivational side of things.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because my 10-year-old son and my 8-year-old daughter are completely different humans, and it took me a while to figure that out, where like things that worked for my son totally backfired with my daughter, and I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But you're right. I think there needs to be this flexibility in a lot of different realms in life, in coaching and athletics and parenting, to be able to work with each individual person and their strengths and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And you have to read it too, Bethany, because you work with so many moms and you're a health and wellness coach, and the different personalities they have. So that affects how you communicate and teach them as well. Right?
Because everybody's lifestyle is different, and how everybody handles the stress and the overwhelm and all that goes along with life in every different phase can be so different from one person to the other. So I feel like that's one of my strengths and my skill set, is being able to kind of get to know each individual person and kind of figure out what approach that will work best for them. And I think it's the same in a lot of different things, even probably in corporate America.
Yeah.
I think having my way, it's all this black and white thinking, right? Like my way is the best way and everybody has to do it that way. I think that's us into a lot of trouble in a lot of different.
Well, and I think to that point, my mother has always, when you hear somebody say, well, that's the way we've always done it.
Yes.
I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
doesn't mean we can't change.
That's a terrible reason to do something. It is really a terrible reason to do something, because that's the way we've always done it. And I think that's the beauty of what we see over the last 25 years in sport, especially. I mean, the nutrition side of things, there's just so many different aspects that we coming up through, middle school and high school just didn't have the resources that we look at now. Like, how do you not utilize this stuff? You know what I mean? Which is really cool for these kids and these athletes. But just like we were back then, you have it so much better. It's like, come on. So how do you get these kids to really buy into that and then leverage it? I tell our kids, like for pole vaulters that I coach, I'm like, you can go to Instagram and follow, thousands of different athletes and watch different techniques. And so like, we didn't have resources like that back then. And I know my son and daughter, they're both out there, and I send them, different, whether it's plyometrics, different drills, things that they have access to. It really is exciting. And then it goes back to that same old, okay, but who's going to put that work in?
Right.
Yeah. Like you cannot say, I don't have the info. I don't know what to do. Come on.
Yeah.
Google it. You know what to do. You can watch an entire, you can build a whole year's worth of workouts through YouTube, I'm sure. And finding some people, there was a point I got into kettlebells. Like there are guys that are big time into just straight kettlebell work. That's all they do. And you can build. So I think you get rid of the excuses, right? I think so many people have excuses as to why they haven't started my diet or started this. And I was just telling somebody else this, the mantra I heard recently, do it now. Right? Do it now. Everybody says, oh, well, I'll do it in January for the New Year resolution.
I actually, there was just this great, I just started following this account. I can't even think of it off the top of my head, but he had this whiteboard, and on his whiteboard, the question basically was, you keep saying, I'm going to get to this when I take a break, but nobody takes the break because I'm just going to finish this one more thing. I'm just going to do this one more thing. I just have this much more to get done. And I think for me, the hardest part when I work with clients or anybody is putting into action the things that we know that we should be doing. And I don't know that it's always as easy as we'll just do it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot, behind that reason why they're not able to implement certain things. So I think we also have to not only, there's information overload too, then sometimes just people don't even know where to start. So they're like, and I just won't do anything.
Well,
right.
And one of those things that I have found to help, and I actually have a coaching call with my business coach right after this, is, and I think, Steve, I've talked to you about the Eisenhower matrix, the quadrant. And what it talks about, it talks about important and urgent.
Yes.
And finding the things that, and this is day to day, like what is urgent that needs done today, whether it's, somebody needs a signature on a page to go to their, field trip or whatever. I mean, what's urgent and important, and then, reverse engineering that to see what do I delegate, what do I not do, because there's things that we want to do where it's like, I just can't justify doing that right now. I need to get X, Y, and Z done. And that's where I go back to the importance of time management.
Yeah.
And so I mean, there's no doubt we all kind of make excuses, but I think if you try to live in that top right corner of doing things that are urgent and important, it also makes it easier for you to, on the downtime, really relax, because you focused on the important and urgent things, and maybe save those unimportant and non-urgent things for the weekend or your free time. But I think that's having the discipline. And that goes back to as an athlete, you had to have the discipline, to do those summer workouts when the coaches weren't leaning over your shoulders. And that's where, how many athletes were made when no one was watching,
It's not done during the season. It's only done the off season.
I think part of the struggle is we live in such a hustle culture society. We live in stress, right? We live in chronic stress. And when we're in a stress response, everything feels urgent. I think is part of the problem. And it's hard to
it's overwhelming.
Right. And you feel like everything's got to get done. But to your point, being able to step back and get to a place where you can start to think about, all right, what really is a priority? Because I think, well, for me in motherhood, athletics, right, was not on my plate anymore. And that used to be my number one thing. And I put everything aside to make that happen. And then I almost did the complete opposite when I had kids. And all of their needs are so important. And I'll get to my needs when I have time. And that time literally never comes unless you figure out a way. To your point, I like that idea of that quadrant, right? Of prioritizing, like what really has to get done and being able to be in a place where you can reconcile, like that really isn't, the laundry really isn't that important. It's not that important, right? But it feels important because it's just on that to-do list.
Yeah, and like you said, it never stops.
It never stops.
And I think once you realize it doesn't stop, that's when and it becomes a real pain, point for you. You find a solution.
Yes.
And that's where, especially in business, right? Like, what are the things that I like to do and I do well, and what are the things that, man, I just really need an assistant for, or somebody that I can delegate this to, even if it requires compensation, because I know how much it drags down my spirit. It drags down everything. I'd rather just pay somebody who, by the way, is going to do it better than I do, because I don't have the right spirit to do it, though, and yet there's somebody out there that loves to do that aspect of your pain point. So let them shine. And I think that's where, going back to that quadrant, when you realize the things that you can delegate or that you realize just aren't important enough to take up my precious time, because we all get 24 hours. I think that's where it's like anybody else says, you really, until you know you need somebody, it's like, okay, it's sometimes better to get there. I remember a guy that used to help me out with the bookkeeping. He's like, man, I'm sorry it took you getting to this place to hire somebody. I've seen this coming, and I'm so thankful you finally realize it's time to hire somebody. And so again, those are those those challenging steps. And, my wife always says, because she tries to work with small business owners, loan officers that are going to start their own business, that taking that leap of faith is huge. I mean, I don't care if it's hiring a babysitter so that you and your spouse can go out on a date night. I mean, those are the things that have to become a priority just so that you can have that quote work-life balance, and really be able to provide your clients the best of who you are. Yeah. Because when we're getting just run ragged, it's really hard to be the best person you are. And I think you look back on sports and it's like, yeah, I would have gotten more sleep as an athlete. I ate right. So why do I now treat my body so poorly and just get run ragged when you know as a former athlete how important those components are? So,
well, and how do you balance all of that? You have 4 kids ranging from what, ages 16 to 6?
16 to 6. Yeah.
And you've got your own businesses?
Yeah.
He's got 12 businesses.
But I think that's where I go back to like the guy I hired when I did the books. I mean, I think of now having the people that we have, if I lost them, I would
you'd be screwed.
And so it goes the opposite way. Like I remember I could never envision having somebody help me clean the house and help me do the books and help me, show properties. And yet I look back now and I'm like, I don't know how in the world I could do this without them. Yeah. So it is, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And that's where I say figuring out the pain points for you. Like every day, if you run into something where you have to go do it and it's just like, oh my goodness, can that be delegated? Can that be done by somebody? And I don't care if it's running for the kids. Like one of the requirements for us with babysitters was that they had to be able to drive.
Yes.
And we got to a point where we literally leased a vehicle for our babysitter so that she could drive our kids around. And we made sure it was an all-wheel drive because we have snow. Right. But it was worth it for us to, acquire a vehicle, for the sitter who was going to be taking care of our kids.
But I would argue not everybody has the financial means to be able to do those types of things either.
That very true.
But I did like what you said about finding the solution to the problem. And I think sometimes we don't solve the right problem, right? Like we're solving the surface problem. So for a lot of times it's, I can't get X done, so I have to, maybe getting a sitter, but then really looking deeper into the why behind what really is stopping me. Because I know for a lot of moms, it's mom guilt, why they don't hire the sitter to make time for date night, right? Yeah. Because you're going to have screaming kids. This has happened to me. Clinging to your leg, won't let you out the door. You're a mess. The kids are a mess. You're going out to dinner, and then you sit at dinner with your husband, and all you do is talk about the kids.
Yeah, then it's like it's just not worth it. Right. And now here's the only thing, and that I would push back on, Bethany, in regards to not having the money, because I know, especially like my mother was a stay-at-home mom. You know what I mean? So I know we didn't have very many means, but when you look at it from a business perspective, and my point was to this, I had an agent with us who was she was a superstar. And one of the things that held her back is one of her partners helped with her kids and babysitting. But when I looked at her production and we broke down how much she was worth an hour based on honestly how many hours she worked, and we're a commission-based business, so it's kind of hard to figure out. But she looked at it and said, okay, I'm worth like $75 an hour. And I said, okay, if you're worth $75 an hour, can you pay somebody $20 an hour to do those things that you do part of the time? And now not only you look at the expense of $20, but if you think of it that they're doing the $75 an hour tasks, you're paying them $20. That means you're keeping $55. And so now you're actually worth $130 an hour. Yeah. So I know it does cost money, but the way you think about it, and again, when you talk about having somebody over for date night, that's different. But if it's, hey, having somebody over so I can stay at the office for 2 extra hours to get those things done that I know are going to be worth paying that person less money than what I'm worth. So part of it to me is changing your thought process and then adding a value to it. Like, what is the value of going on a date night? Like, how refreshing is it when you know you have, like, if they're staying with your parents and the grandparents love staying with the kids. And so one night a month is not.
Yeah, exactly.
Deal. So I think starting off with little things, but so many people talk about it but then they never take that first step. And this is where,
Yes.
like Steve and I have talked about, even with a podcast, everybody says, oh, I've been meaning to do that. I should have done that. And it's like, okay, well, just do it now, get it started, and then figure out what changes you need to make as you go. And that was true in business, and how I got to the point where we had people doing the things that I once did because I put it into action and I just did it myself to get started.
Yeah.
So for some people, it's just getting started. For others, it's really trying to refine their business and kind of step out of it so that they can start doing the things like, and it pains me when I hear you say that, as far as stopping your pursuit of athletics and whatever else once you have kids, because I think part of the best thing about having kids, especially like of competitive age, like my son, dude, I'll still beat you. Like,
yeah.
I never let them win.
And it's so I had a tough postpartum. I don't know what you know about my background. But after the Olympics, I went on to compete in CrossFit, and I competed in CrossFit doing the CrossFit Games on team. The year before I had my son, and in between years having my daughter. And then after weaning my daughter at 15 months, I was not okay. Like, really? I could barely function every day. I felt dead inside. I had mom rage, which we've talked at length about. I was like, who am I? Because to your point, I would try to work out. I'd have to take a 2-hour nap after. It was more exhausting. Like, I had no strength. It was because
you loved it before. I
loved it before. I never thought there'd be a day that I didn't exercise. But I had this almost exercise intolerance, and my body was just spent. It was completely depleted. And so my mission now is to help other moms know, like, you don't have an infinite amount in the bank, right?
Amen. That's true.
And I think I took a little bit for granted what my body had done for me and what it would continue to do for me. And it eventually was like, we don't have anything left.
Well,
so I
you
learned
did it for
the
so
hard
long.
way. Yeah. I learned the hard way. And it's taken me a long time to get back to a place, I get to the gym now and I work out. I felt really fragile for a very long time, and that sucked.
It is. It's tough when you first go back after a while.
This past summer, we have my son does ninja, and we have a ninja.
Oh, the ninja, that's right.
We kind of rigged it up a little bit. We've souped it up to be a little ninja rig. And there's this lache. It's where you swing from one bar and then you go and then catch the next one.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I think today's the day I'm going to try it, kids. And my son's like, let me get the video.
Yeah.
So he's videotaping it. I missed the first one. And I was like, all right, hold on. I'm like, please don't blow out a shoulder right now.
Yes. Serious concerns right there. Yes.
And I did it. And God, I miss, and I do want to get back to like a sport someday. I think I will. And I think there was a mental side for me and that kind of stuff that I'm working through in therapy and all that. Yeah. So I don't know that everybody has that tough of an experience postpartum or from not doing athletics to like getting into athletics. But I definitely do challenge my kids to mommy still could be faster than you, and mommy is still stronger than you.
Yes, very much so.
Not for long there, my 10-year-old man.
Is that right? That's awesome.
But like, and you actually, I had mentioned you were starting another business as well. So you're still building on your entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes, that has been a lot of what I've been pouring my heart and soul into.
That's so exciting.
The motherhood wellness stuff. But we haven't quite launched it yet, but we're starting a new business soon that will be up and coming. Big announcement. But yeah, we're busy just trying to bring health and wellness to the world and figure out. I think you made a great point, Laban, about biting off one bite at a time. And that's the premise of the work that I do is what is the smallest step, because it's smaller than we even think, to just start getting a little momentum. Everybody waits for motivation, but you have to sometimes take that action first, and then the motivation comes. The other day, my daughter had a laundry basket full of folded laundry, and I could have easily done it for her, but I have other things to do, and my kids are old enough to do these things now. And so I had been on her for days, like, when are you going to put those clothes away? And so Sunday was the day, and she was hemming and hawing, like, I don't want to do it. There's so many. And I said, just do this. I said, go set Alexa. She has an Alexa in her room. Go set Alexa for 10 minutes and do 10 minutes worth of work. And when she goes off, you can be done. Well, I knew what was going to happen. She finished that whole damn basket.
In 10 minutes.
Came downstairs. She was so proud of herself. She's like, I did the whole thing. And I was like, I thought we were only going to do 10 minutes. She's like, well, once I got started, I figured, you know what, I might as well just do it. And I'm like, that's exactly it. Just bite off a little piece that feels manageable, and it makes you minuscule. Like, go out for a 5-minute walk. You know what's going to happen? Once you get out there, you're going to feel good. You're going to be like, you know what? I can go a little further.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the challenge is doing that like every day. It's the new, I think as you get older, you realize, you know, as a kid, I had that excitement, that momentum, that motivation. And as you get older, it's like, oh, okay, I got myself up yesterday, but today's a new day and it's more difficult. Right. So I think but setting that tone early with kids, I think is so vital because, again, at least for me, I had to experience it to learn it. Like I really had to. You could tell me one thing, but I needed to get in there, get my hands dirty. And to that point, once you realize that, and that's where I go back to trying to tell myself, do it now, because to that point, if you just start doing it, it's like, okay, if I can just work on a little bit, and then it's like, oh, okay. Or somebody cancels an appointment, so now I can keep going on this. Whereas if I don't start it because, I only have 45 minutes, I'll never get it all done. And then something else. So I think if you just started, it's amazing how either, all the lights turn green on your way to your appointment. That's sort of, it's putting yourself in that right mindset to know that, and then how easy. My dad's always been a big checklist guy, and that's where I do like journaling, and I keep what I do on the daily, because if I make a list, it is. And to your daughter who said, it felt so good. Like what that does to your endorphins and the physiological changes in your body. It's like that guy, the military guy that said how important it is to wake up in the morning and make your bed.
Make your bed.
Because at the end of the day, no matter good or bad, you come back and you realize that you made your bed and you can start the next day fresh again. So, I think you're right. There is a lot to be said for just getting it started and doing it, you know what I mean? So
I think, and it's finding that path of least resistance, especially for the demographic that I work with. Cause I would argue, like, if making your bed feels too hard, but you can skip that so you can eat breakfast instead of skipping it. And then, cause once you start doing that one little thing and building that momentum and feeling better, everything just gets easier. Right. So that path of least resistance, kind of figuring out what is the bare minimum that you can do today to just start moving the needle a little bit can be so impactful.
Laban, did you and Bethany interact or go to the same meets?
You did.
Okay.
Yeah.
They would have the men's and women's meets together sometimes too.
We mostly were together.
A lot of times we would travel. Now, I think they would have, the men on one bus and the women on, I don't remember being, you know what I mean? Like it was still separate teams, the scoring and all that. I think all the meets we would travel together.
Yeah.
I got you. And but you were doing separate events, obviously. But did you interact? Were you friendly in high school, in college when you were UConn?
Yeah, honestly, I was so busy doing different events and different sports. It is wild when I think back on some of the interactions, just because you rarely came together as a whole group.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like I was friends with Lissa Bloom too. And so I was, in that throwers circle, if you will. But I mean, there wasn't I guess a whole lot of interaction. Of course, I always had trouble. It's like, is that Bethany or her sister?
My twin sister did go to the same college, so it was confusing. And
she ran track though too, right?
She did in the first year, and then she went over to rowing, so she was still around.
So she was
still
with
in the weight room.
Katie. I think. Oh my goodness, because her name was actually Katie Hart, and it's now Katie Hart Peterson.
Oh, too funny.
I can't think of. Oh, she's going to kill me. I just
But yeah, I also,
her maiden name.
My twin sister is a total extrovert and I'm a complete introvert. And I think I just like kept my head down. I just worked hard. I still have a little touch of social anxiety, but I had a lot back then. And Steve, you actually, I found it hilarious. So after we've reconnected all these years, and you told me recently that you were terrified of me.
Yes.
In college,
terrified.
Resting bitch face. I think I was that person.
No, I was just terrified because I'd
serious head down doing my job, and I'd
see you in the weight room
to people.
And I would be I was like, wow. Like,
I hear that a lot. My wife says that a lot too, though. I think there is something to be said for strong, independent women that appear to be intimidating. Like, and my wife has felt it even in the corporate world, where she just, from her athletic background, she's very confident. She's got herself together. She can speak well to others. And for a lot, especially for men that are a little bit insecure, they have a lot of trouble with it. They have a lot of trouble. And I think that's where, for me, I'm so thankful. My mother is extremely strong. My wife is strong. And my two daughters, like nobody is pushing them around. Now, there is something that, and I think obviously when you get to know these women, they're very, not only are they strong, independent, but they're so caring and out. What they give to others is endless.
Yeah, Steve's not scared of me anymore.
Well, and I think I like that.
Being a state away helps.
But even when you look at, the unfortunate circumstances of a lot of women, or if they go out to jog and, things, act, there's a lot to be said for your posture and how you carry yourself. I mean, oftentimes they are not attacked as often because these attackers are a little nervous about the strong woman who carries herself with her shoulders back and her chin up. So that's where, I love hearing stories about my daughters and their toughness, and assertiveness. So no, I think that's awesome. But I think, again, going back to after athletics are over, and now you're into parenting and business, I think part of that, the success comes from the tenacity and kind of, as coaches made us do certain workouts, making our kids do certain exercises or chores just to let them understand responsibility. And I've said, since having kids, we don't give kids enough credit for how smart they are.
They're capable. They are so capable, so much sooner than we recognize. And we do just do for them a lot. I think you get into the habit, right? Because they're so dependent early on that you kind of miss that phase where you're like, they totally could be helping and contributing right now.
Yes. Yeah. And then my wife is much better about this with like dishes. And then my little bit of OCD comes in. It's like, I can take care of it. Please don't.
Oh, my husband is like you with those, like, I'll do it. I gotta
there. And I think that's where, and my wife and I have this debate because, and I'd be curious to know your opinion, because like I grew up in a house with 4 boys. And so like I don't remember my mom ever requiring us to help with dishes or anything, but I like to help her because I knew my mom worked hard. So I wanted to help her.
Oh, nice.
And so now I do dishes and things like that to help my wife. Whereas my wife was required to do dishes, like had a chore. And now she wants to make our kids do it, but she hates it. And I'm like, okay, just from these 2 scenarios, I'm going to take the approach where if we don't require it of them, we just ask to help and see how this is benefiting us versus requiring them as a chore. See if it plays out to where they're more like me, where I just want to help out versus, hey, you got to do this.
Yes.
So I think there's a balance and even a little bit of exploratory, let's try this out and just see, because obviously money incentivizes everybody, but then you don't require them to do the chores. And so that's tough. I just remove the chores and money and just say, hey, we're trying to help mom and dad out here. Can you do this?
Exactly.
And I can actually show you how to do it the right way.
Yeah. We call them family contributions.
Yeah.
Instead of chores. And we don't pay them to do them. We talk about, like, you're a member of the family. We're all contributing to the mess here. And so it's really the right thing to do is to help clean up after yourself. And speaking of bite-sized pieces, so we started with, like one kid does the forks and one kid does the knives at an age appropriate way. And now we're to a point, my son does the lower part of the dishwasher and my daughter does the top part. Then once that got nailed down and became a pretty consistent part of our week, then we started with, okay, after dinner to help, because daddy has a mountain of dishes every night and he's up till midnight because his OCD won't let him sleep till the kitchen is like, you get it. You're like, I'm right there. So to help daddy out, because we've all used these dishes, at least get them over onto the side of the counter. Then after we did that, then the next step was to have them actually put them in the dishwasher. So we just broke it down into little steps. But to your point, my 10-year-old hates me telling him what he has to do when he walks in the door after school. And I'm like, okay, Riker. And he's like, don't tell me what I have to do. So we've gotten to a place, he's got a whiteboard and I'll put stuff down and he just knows. And I've left a lot of it kind of up to him to figure out, like, you have to get your homework done. You have to accept that free time is not as much as it was in your past life because you're a 5th grader now. Just accept it. And you have to get your work done before Thursday night.
Yeah.
I don't care how you do it. My daughter's like, she comes home, she's like, I want to get it done before I watch screens. She's super organized. Great executive functioning at 8 years old. My 10-year-old, total nightmare.
But I almost wonder if your 10-year-old won't be the CEO hiring your daughter.
Will I tell you this though? Yes, because he did it. I'm like, you're responsible, and we had his parent-teacher conference last week. Remember, Steve? I had to get off.
Yes, you had to go to that. Yes,
and he's getting his homework done. He hasn't missed an assignment yet. That's great. I just say to him, like, what do you have left to do before bedtime tonight? That's the only thing I'm allowed to say. Because if I tell him, like, you have to go clean the chicken coop, you have to go put your dishes away, he's like, why are it? And he freaks out. So I totally get that, like, being told what to do versus them just kind of creating their own environment. And I do think there's a balance there from one extreme to the other. Because I don't know that everyone is like you, Laban, who would have that intuitiveness to be like, I should help out because my parents work hard.
Now, Bethany, would you coach? That was the other thing I was wondering. Do you see yourself getting into coaching when your kids get older, maybe?
My therapist specifically told me not to coach my kids.
Told you not to coach. Told you not to go back to that place. Yeah.
Do you mind elaborating on that, though? Because I know I don't have trouble, but I know a lot of coaches that feel that the parents are just too much. So can you elaborate on that?
I think that was the concern. Because so early on there, my son and I had this dynamic. Like, he'd be on the playground at like 4 doing the monkey bars. And the coach in me is like, oh, I should show him how to do it this more efficient way. Right? I'm coaching my 4-year-old on the monkey bars. It's fine. And so I would go over and be like, hey, buddy, like, what if you did it this way? And he would lose his shit at me and be so mad. And I was like, hey, listen, I was just trying to be helpful. So I would have these conversations with my therapist, and she's like, I would advise that you don't
stay out of it.
Like, just be a motivation for them. Like, and so I have made it a point, because I don't want my kids, I don't want to set expectations for them that there's this pedestal that I need them to be at with sports and athletics. And I like they both have an internal drive. And to your point, Laban, I think it's this natural drive. I don't want to mess with it. Mm-hmm. And so I think if for some reason, from my perspective with my kids, coaching them, I think would not necessarily be a good dynamic with me instructing them on how to be better at what they're doing. So I come more from the motivational side, just go out there, do your best, work hard. That's all you can ask for. Don't worry about scoring the goals, worry about how you're going to get there type mentality. And that's about the extent of my coaching.
Well, if it wasn't coaching your own kids, would you be more comfortable just like as a coach?
Yeah, coaching other I do enjoy coaching. I have a niece who's picked up hammer throwing in college.
Really? How cool is that?
And that has been super fun. She sends me videos. And I've gone to some of her meets, and I'm like, God, what was that we used to talk about?
Yeah.
Wow. That has been fun. And I think at some point, if I had more time, I would love to step in and do some coaching and like the throws and stuff like that. Lifting.
I'll tell you, to your point though, Bethany, because there's a girl from my high school that vaults at UConn right now.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the same
Yes.
thing. She will send me videos.
Callie.
And Coach Miller's still there, right? But she still sends me videos in the middle of meets. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So, or
Yeah.
if they're on live, I'll watch them there. But I think that's the other thing with coaching. Like it's different than what it was 25 years ago. Like you can coach virtually, essentially.
Yes, absolutely.
Via video and things like that. So, and then if you're trying to monetize that, I think that's where it's always been a challenge, because in our side of the state, we don't really have as many clubs and things. Whereas out in Philly and that side, that's basically how these kids vault, and they have memberships and things like that. So,
that's I think why you have one at your house.
Right. It's that fine line of, what are we doing just to help these kids have a chance? And then is there a way to monetize it? Are you looking to, because then once you monetize it, there's more accountability. You know what I mean? It's not
absolutely.
It's not the volunteer, hey, I'd love to help you out. It's like, hey, we're paying you. I want to see results.
Right.
And so those are the things where I think in coaching, and Bethany, I coach my daughter in the vault, and I'm glad I have assistants, because I mean, there are but it's not the technical instruction, it's all the other stuff around that. You know what I mean? And this is true with a lot of kids. Like when you're coaching them, most of the coaching isn't the technique, it's the encouragement. You know what I mean? And just knowing that, hey, maybe they did have a hard day, and a hard day relative to what we know a hard day as, but to these kids, it was a rough day. And they get beat up at home, not physically, but mentally, by their parents and their expectations.
Yeah, it's a lot of demands.
Yeah. So I try to look at it as a way to really encourage the kids, teach them, the technique and the fundamentals, but so much of coaching is trying to help encourage and building, and empowering these kids to become the best athletes and the best people they can become. And how many times, Steve, have we talked about some of the best people and best employees and business owners are former athletes. They've been through it. They know what work ethic is. They know what teamwork is.
Discipline.
They know how to deal with failure.
Yeah.
Right?
Overcoming adversity.
Adversity, perseverance, all of those.
Yeah.
For sure.
Bethany, one of the questions that we got asked several times was, because you were an athlete all your life, you trained all your life. After your pregnancies, how long did it take you before you felt comfortable going back into the gym and working out?
Well, I think I paid a price because I went back very early.
So you tried to go right back. You tried to go right back.
I mean, well, you're cleared at 6 weeks. But I think, looking back now, cleared at 6 weeks for most people is like to just go back to regular daily life. I was CrossFitting at the time. So I was back to trying to deadlift and clean and jerk and do crazy stuff. I mean, I don't think I didn't go back and try to do the same weights I did before I got pregnant for sure. But I think even my baseline starting was probably higher than where I should have started. So I was back in the gym 6 weeks after having my kids.
Yeah. And the other question,
I don't think that was the right move, honestly.
No, I agree with you. I think you should have taken more time, and it's good that you recognize that. The other question we got was about training in general, and Laban can answer this too. Because I remember we had Jerry Martin, and it was bench, it was clean, it was squat. There's three main lifts. And it seems like now that things are more specialized, individualized, focused on certain muscle groups, not doing as much heavy weight, doing more reps, trying to strengthen your overall core. Would you say training in general has changed that much since?
Are you talking more about from an athletics perspective?
From an athletic perspective.
Well, Laban might be better able to answer that because I haven't been much out in the athletic world, like in the high schools, colleges, to see what kind of training they're doing. But I think some of it's probably similar with the main power lifts and Olympic lifts and that kind of stuff. But I'm pretty sure it's probably progressed, I would hope, in some ways into more functional type movements for sports. Depending on the sport.
But when because I know you do work some workouts with women, some personal training stuff still with them. It's obviously different based on their goals and whatever they want to do.
Yeah, but we still focus on a lot of, major muscle groups.
You do, okay.
Well, I think as you get to be a grown-up, whether you've got kids or a job and more demands on you than you had before, and as we get older, I think you have to be more efficient with your time. And I think, it doesn't have to be fancy. I think having variety is great, and focusing, core work certainly is more of a thing now than it was back then, which I think is important from an injury prevention perspective. But I still focus on kind of main lifts with anyone that I work with, good lower body stuff, upper body strengthening, and just try to maximize the time that we have, because a lot of people can't always work out 5-6 days a week like we did before.
Well, Later, what do you think?
I was going to say it's interesting because I think one of the breakthroughs, if you will, since we were in competitive athletics is the downtime, the ice baths, the cold plunges,
recovery.
I mean, think about all those thumpers, as far as muscle, the rollers. We'd see them in athletics, you know what I mean? In college, you'd have some people with the rollers.
But they have some really cool toys.
It's
unbelievable.
Yeah, it really. So to me, I think what has come to light is, quite honestly, the importance of rest and recovery.
Great point.
I remember at UConn, I was fortunate. I took a class on sleep. The woman was in from California, and then she was out after one semester. But I learned so much about the importance of sleep. And
one of the most underrated habits people work on.
And actually, when I don't know if you remember this, Bethany, and this is how separated we were, but I came back, I think it was January 3rd of 2001. And I fell asleep at the wheel when I had 3 16-foot pole vault poles on top of my vehicle. I crested the hill, chewing on a guardrail, and the truck behind me, it was the first Connecticut license plate I'd seen, because I'm from Western Pennsylvania. And this guy lived 5 minutes from campus, threw my 3 16-foot poles, all of the stuff from my Jeep Cherokee, and brought us up to campus. And that's, January, we reported for indoors.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
This was right when that movie Varsity Blues came out. And so Elliot Blount and all those guys were calling me Tweeter from the movie.
Yes.
But listen, I fell asleep at the wheel, and it was terrifying. That's right.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned in that class was that when you are sleep deprived, you're as bad, if not worse, than a drunk driver.
Yes. 1,000%.
And people don't understand that. And that's why they have limits for pilots and truck drivers with so many hours. So I think, and all of that tangent there, to go back to what are kids doing in athletics, I think they are focusing more on the recovery. We know that the Olympic lifts are vitally important. Like you said, the core, strength and plyometrics that are available for kids. But I think it's the backside of that. And even as an old, man now with a joint replacement, one of the most important things for me isn't so much the exercise as the stretching and the massage therapy.
Well, you do the Tai Chi too as well.
I do Tai Chi, which is huge for stretching and then balance. And then I also go to a chiropractor. So I think, when I think of all that stuff, yes, I could do more to strengthen, but it's, for me at my age, it's more vital to do the back end stuff of the stretching and all that stuff. So I think that would be, and for my kids, like, I realize the importance, and I tell my kids all the time, they know it's not the night before the event. It's 2 nights that are the most important night of rest. I think we've all heard that, whether that's a wise tale or what, but sleep is vital. And even, my kids didn't have school yesterday or today. So my 14-year-old, that dude I opened his door at like 12:30 yesterday, because he has open gym at 2:30, and he snaps his head up like, what? I'm like, bro, you're still sleeping? But recovery
is huge.
Yeah. You only grow and recover when you sleep. And so to me, have at it, dude. Sleep, get your stuff done, but sleep it up. So all that, Steve, to answer your question, I think the backside, the recovery, the cold plunges, man, if I would have known how huge, and we would jump in the cold tubs up in the
cold tub.
Berkshire.
Oof,
but for
them.
recovery, man, if you have a hard leg workout and you can just feel it's tough to, you
we
get in
used to do cold
tub.
plunges all the time. I think I have PTSD. We did in Germany one year. We were like in a raging river trying to recover our legs between races.
Yeah, I mean, but it's amazing. And then I
super helpful.
One of the other things is I would, and for track especially, I would lay on my back in the hotel room with my heels against the headboard. Oh yeah,
and for track, yes.
Oh, it felt so good to get that blood
out.
flow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah. I still do it every once in a while. If I've like, especially when we were in Colombia, we did that big walk of that stone. You get done with a long day where you've had a lot of steps. There is nothing like laying on your back and throwing those heels up and just getting that blood to just flow out of there. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So the last question I will ask was for Bethany, because you competed at such a high level for so many years, for so long. Do you still have that competitive spirit in you? Did it kind of dissipate once you had your kids, or is it something that you think that will remain with you forever?
I think it will remain with me forever, and it just comes out in different ways. Whether
like when you're the mommy volcano.
Yeah, that's a bad example of not a great example. Yeah, I've always been competitive. I don't think that will ever not be a part of who I am. I actually was a little too competitive trying to be the best parent in the world, because I was like, I'm going to be perfect at this, and my kids aren't going to cry, and they're not going to have meltdowns, and they're going to do all the chores I asked them to do, and they're going to be amazing. And then I was like, what the hell is happening? Nobody will listen to anything I say.
Yes.
So yeah, no, I think the competitive nature never leaves, and you just
it's always with you.
Just learn to channel it into different aspects of life for me.
Laban, would you say, I mean, because you play with football and track and now coaching.
Clearly a competitive spirit.
That competitive spirit.
So
and in real estate too, your job, very competitive.
I think that's where, and we've talked about this before, Steve, like the secret sauce at UConn was that level of competitiveness. And I go back to even the early part of this conversation where, especially in track, like when somebody threw farther than you or somebody ran faster than, like, you have to respect that. You know what I mean? Like, you can be mad, but you better go and try to compete with them. See what they're doing in the weight room. Like, what are some things? And that's the thing I tell my kids right now as they're competing and they're trying to earn positions. And, you know, a lot of these kids like to blame it on the coach or blame it on the refs. And it's like, I'm all about that book I've talked about, QBQ, the question behind the question. What can you do differently? Personal accountability. And so I think that's where, for me, being competitive, you can't, not only can you not turn it off, I mean, you got to be careful being like, I avoid certain circumstances because I know I am too competitive. Like, there are just things that I will not go and do because I know I'll either hurt myself, like shouldn't do it for my shoulder, or my legs will hurt. But if I even am within the realm of it, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, I will do it, to the point where I was at a 4th of July party and they had a bonfire. And somebody's like, you won't jump over that fire.
You won't jump over it.
Let me put the fire suit on. Yeah, I got it.
And well, that's the thing. It wasn't even for money. I just did it because somebody said you won't.
Just to prove, like, it's this inner feeling of, well, and I think that's partly why I haven't done, they have open, they have an adult ninja class, and I like really want to take it, but I'm a little bit nervous that I'm going to blow something out because I'm so competitive that I'm going to want to be the best, even though I haven't like swung from a bar in years.
But I mean, you're a natural athlete though. I think you would be okay.
Muscle memory is an incredible thing. I can still actually do a standing back tuck, a standing back handstand. Yes. Wow. Every now and again, like they had a anniversary party at the gymnastics place that I used to go to. And I warmed up on the trampoline first, and then I threw one on the floor, and I still did it. I'm 47 years old. And I was like, holy shit, I still got it. I was like so excited. But muscle memory really is amazing. It really does stay with you.
That's the old Toby Keith. I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have to say, this has just been an incredible show. Incredible show.
That was
Thank
fun.
you,
Thanks for
Laban,
coordinating
for
this.
coming on. No, this was
my
Laban,
pleasure.
thanks for coming.
This
That was
was
great.
This was
Keep it
fun.
up.
This will do well. This was a good one. You guys were great. I have to say for sure. Thank you again to Procyon Partners and Be the Match for Ben. We'll put the link to the website. Get your bone marrow tested, and you could be the match that he needs for the treatment and beat the leukemia again. And if you're ever arrested, and when I get a speeding ticket or Laban gets a speeding ticket,
That happens.
We'll call Pete Finch. If you're ever in a pinch, call Pete Finch. Mike Burton, Bleeding Blue for Good. He's raised money and it's paid off. We're going bowling, and we have to continue to just need more people to donate. www.bleedingblueforgood.org. Go to the website. You can pick whatever sport you want to donate to and just give. With the NIL collective, with the way the college landscape is changing, we need to have a war chest, which is crazy. So for the charismatic enigma himself and the king of real estate in Erie, Laban Marsh, for my co-host and cohort, Bethany Hart, Gary. I said it right twice in a row.
Right twice in one show.
Destined to Evolve Wellness is her company, and we'll put that on the website as well, and how you can contact her and the services she offers. Take advantage of it. She's one of the best, and she is available. So we, again, had a fantastic show. I can't wait to put this one up and see how it does. I am Steve Cully, the best podcast host in the universe. Remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges and just